in abundance, love and light, health and wholeness, stillness in abundance, love and light, health and wholeness, stillness in abundance, love and light, health and wholeness. I'll be reading to y'all like the Metaphysical Bible Dictionary by Charles Fillmore. As you can see, shout out to Sabu to God for introducing this and putting this into my life. Y'all can check him out on YouTube. But Jacob, as you can see, Jacob Hill Catcher, leer in wait, supplanter, leaving behind, bringing to an end, recompassing, and reward. It's the younger of the twins of Isaac and Rebekah, but the one who obtained the birthright. Metaphysically, Jacob and Esau represent the animal the animal consciousness within each of us. Esau, the hairy man, typifies the animal which comes first into expression. Most of the human family let him rule in consciousness, but in the line of human unfoldment, this man of nature, Esau, must be supplanted by a higher type called Jacob, the supplanter, the mentality or understanding. Jacob also represents the idea of the I am identity through which the faculties of the mind received their original inspirations. Jacob had 12 sons, to each of whom he gave the office, and each of whom he blessed or inspired with his spiritual wisdom. The Bible narrative about Jacob and Esau has always been read historically, and theologians have had trouble trying to excuse Jacob and Rebekah for the apparent duplicity that they perpetuated upon Esau. When read in the light of spiritual understanding or considered as part of the history of the unfoldment of the individual soul, the incident loses its aspect of duplicity, and we find that it is a description of the subtle working of the soul in spiritual evolution under the guidance of divine mind. The soul is progressive. We must go forward. The soul must meet and overcome its limitations. Esau was a hunter. He finds his pleasure in the realm of animal forces. The cravings of the lower nature are in ascendancy. Esau gave his birthright to appease his hunger. The red pottage mentioned in the scripture symbology refers to the life substance of the body. The natural man is first in the natural man is first in man's evolution. First that which is natural, then that which is spiritual, says Paul. We all agree that a strong body is required to express a strong mind. That is the divine plan. The men of the new race will have robust bodies. They will not be weaklings mentally or physically. Healing of the body is fundamental in the outworking of God's perfect man idea. The natural man is not wise. Esau was a hunter and he loved sport better than spirit. He was not seeking development through soul culture. In order to carry forward the whole man, it was necessary to supplant and suppress him. This is the meaning of the deception by Jacob and Rebekah. The mental must gain the supremacy and the physical must lose prominence. This is what Jacob and Rebekah did. They got Isaac, I am, to acknowledge the mind as first as at first. To acknowledge the mind as first in consciousness. Jacob went to another country which represents apparent separation. An explanation of Genesis 28:10-22 is as follows. Jacob, the mental, went toward Haran, high place. The mind enters a higher state of consciousness. At a certain place in consciousness, the understanding is unilluminated. One of the stones of the place that Jacob put under his head represents the contact of understanding with material conditions. The ladder, Jacob's ladder, represents step-by-step realizations of truth. These pure thoughts, angels of God, ascend and descend in consciousness. Jehovah, the I am, as verses 13 to 14, occupies the highest place in consciousness. The spiritualized thoughts of the mind become the seed and bless all the earth. The Lord is constantly in our midst, and we must eventually come into divine consciousness. The mind is startled when it discovers God to be an omniscient principle. In verse 17, in verse 17 is represented the realization that the body house is the temple of God and that the mind is the gate to heaven. Harmony. In the light of understanding, the morning verse 18, the things that holy, and we anoint them with oil, love, joy, and gladness. Bethel signifies house of God. Luz means separation. That which had seemed separate and apart is brought into unity. It say verses 20 to 22 represent the first attempt of the enlightened mind to the excuse me. Verses 20 to 22 represent the first attempt of the enlightened mind to covenant with God and trust Spirit for all things. Keeping the law of giving and receiving is recognized as a step in spiritual development. Taking a wife symbolizes a unification of the I am with the affections. Jacob was told to go to the Padan Aram tableland, to the house of Bethuel, unity with God, and take a wife from the daughters of Laban, white, pure, shining. Genesis chapter 28, verses 2 through 7. This points the way to a unification with the love principle in its higher aspects. Exalted ideas, divine aspirations, and pure motives are here designated as necessary to the union with the soul that the I am is about to make. In Genesis 33, 1 through 15, we read of the reunion of Jacob and Esau. In the first and second verse, Jacob the mental prepares to unite with Esau. With Esau, physical expression, mind and body must be joined before the divine law can be fulfilled. Verses 3 and 4, the mind must be unified with the body and all the seven natural faculties, or the seven chakras. When the union between mind and body takes place, a humility born of surrender of the self comes into expression. The woman and the children here represent accumulations of the mind. The mind is willing to share its accumulations, but the body, Esau, cannot receive the gift until it has been uplifted. In verses 10 and 11, we find that after the mind and body are reconciled and adjusted, they share alike the gifts of spirit. Jacob, the mind, should go before and direct the body, Esau. Verses 13, the children and the young animals in the flocks and herds symbolize new ideas being established in consciousness. Verses 14 to 15, there is not necessarily enmity, I believe, between the mind and body of man, but only a difference in state of consciousness. The body becomes the body becomes an obedient servant of the mind when the two are unified in divine mind. My bad, but I was reading most of that through the phone because I wanted y'all to see the words. But the last part I had to read it off the paper because it sounded like I couldn't read. But yeah, man, I wanted to share that with y'all. I felt, led to share that with y'all. So, Jacob ladders, man. That's what Jacob means in Esau, I know this will give y'all a different interpretation and give you a different outlook of what the Bible is actually talking about and what these names mean in the Bible.